I'm home.
Throws to the near side, and that's intercepted. Intercepted by Jack Jones, heading down the near sideline, and this will be a pick six for Jack Jones and a touchdown for Arizona State.
People here, when you think of Sun Devil football, you think of Sun Devil for life.
Here we go, 7 seconds. Berkovici. He's just going to air it out deep downfield, and no white shirts around. Oh, Jalen Strong! Caught for a touchdown! Jalen Strong makes the catch!
I went to Arizona State. Right. I'm a Sun Devil, man.
This is about the Valley. We need the Valley. If we get the Valley all in, the sky is the limit.
Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
I'm Joe Healy with DevilsDigest.com.
Happy New Year, Joe. Happy New Year to all of our listeners. 2023 is here, and it definitely has a different feel to it as we head into this new year than we were perhaps a year ago in terms of Sun Devil football, perhaps Sun Devil athletics as a whole. A lot of positivity, a lot of new energy, and of course, being a new year, it's a time for some new goals and some new resolutions.
As everybody is packing up all the holiday decorations and maybe by now shaking off the hangover from New Year's Eve, unless you're like me and I crashed at like 10 o'clock or something like that. Yeah, it's a good time to look back, look ahead. So in addition to some of the normal talk we'll have, we'll identify some New Year's resolutions we have for Sun Devil football, as well as a couple just for other areas of ASU athletics to hopefully make 2023 better year than 2022, because I was thinking back on it, and I don't want to really harp on this, but if you think about the major men's sports for ASU, the calendar year of 2022 between football, baseball, basketball, not good. I don't think any of them made any postseason, if I'm not mistaken, outside of the baseball conference tournament. So, there's room for improvement. Yeah, definitely a new year and some new optimism. So we'll definitely be talking about some of the things that we are going to be hoping to see out of Sun Devil sports, and perhaps with a focus on Sun Devil football. And along those lines of things that are new and fun and promising, we'll be talking a little bit in a few minutes to new ASU running backs Cam Skattebo, coming over from Sacramento State, one of the most productive players in all of the FCS, the Big Sky Offensive Player of the Year, a new weapon for Kenny Dillingham, Sean Aguano, and company on that side of the ball. Some really good things that he will have to say about why he chose ASU, and some things that you fans can look for from him on the field in 2023. But before we talk to Cam, let's dive into a few of the news items that have been popping up since we last joined you. Now, of course, a reminder that the window is open until January 18th, and there will be another one post-spring. But so just a few more days in this very hectic cycle, which saw ASU add a number of key players. So since we last joined you, ASU has not made any new public additions, but 2 ASU players have entered their names in the portal. One to be expected, one perhaps caught some folks by surprise. Starting off with defensive back, kick returner. I believe he also opened his career in Tempe as a running back. It's DJ Taylor, who most recently moved over to nickelback and played a little bit of defense, making 16 tackles on the year with a TFL and a pass breakup. But of course, most notably, they made his name as a kick returner, first team all-conference selection in the 2020 COVID-shortened season. But this past season, just really not effective in terms of returning the ball, just 22.5 yards on kick returns and just under 3.5 yards on his punt returns. Just a guy that sometimes made some questionable decisions in terms of whether to bring balls out. A guy who obviously had a lot of confidence in his return ability, but in that 2020 season he had 8 returns, averaging over 34 yards per kick, and most notably that about 108-yard game opening touchdown against U of A. But just in the 2 seasons since, just averaging a flat 22 yards on kick returns. That's just simply pretty pedestrian and not going to get it done. Yeah, I mean, that's one that doesn't strike as a major surprise. I mean, when you kind of look at the roster and think of the players who might be ones who are primed to transfer, whether it's from ASU or any other school. You look at guys who've been around for a handful of years and maybe get a little stagnant in their role. Now, granted, his role on defense obviously increased quite a bit last year from what it was before, but it was at the point prior to that where he was pretty much only a kick and punt returner. Very, very limited action on offense or defense his first couple of years. As you said, go down in Sun Devil lore for that 100-plus yard kick return to open up that 70-7 beatdown. Everybody's going to love him for that. But you just look at the landscape of things, and he essentially got moved out of the key returner position. They were using other guys by the time the season wore down. So if you take that arrow out of the quiver, or if it's something that he takes himself out of, then that really decreases the overall value. But this is the circumstance where it just makes sense, and obviously should be no hard feelings, nor are there. Just get a new opportunity, because ASU has other players in the return game that it's using, and some from this incoming transfer and recruiting class that they like. And when it comes to the secondary, even though things are turning around, you still have quite a few bodies and guys that have played out there. So, again, just makes sense.
Yeah, so wishing him well. And as you mentioned, ASU did, of course, load up in the initial signing period. I believe they brought in 6 new defensive backs into the fold, along with a lot of returning talent as well. So just not necessarily a whole lot of opportunity there on the defensive side of the ball. And as you mentioned, just the results weren't there in terms of just the returns. Javen Jacobs had been getting some more look last year, the exciting true freshman out of Saguaro. So as well as a number of other skill position players that ASU could probably give a good look to in terms of elevating the return game under new coordinator Charlie Regal. This other portal entry, though, perhaps raised some eyebrows, because it kind of flew in the face of ASU's recent come home Arizona focused initiative. And especially when you hear the last name, his brother Kyle was a multi-year captain, a multi-year starter, a guy who just bled maroon and gold. And along with Kyle, linebacker Connor Soley had been an ASU fan since they were children, and attended Scottsdale Saguaro High School. Former Saguaro head coach Jason Mons is now on staff. But perhaps after ASU made a number of additions to bolster that linebacker group, and after a season in which Connor, of course, contributed on special teams, but just on the defensive side of the ball, and opening the year as a starter alongside his brother, just made 2 starts overall, played in 12 games, making 30 total tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1 pass breakup, and really just, especially these days with ASU playing almost like a base nickel, it seemed like a lot. Kyle and Merlin Robertson were the 2 linebackers that got the majority of the run, of course, as accomplished veterans as they were. But it's still a little interesting that Connor Soley, a guy with such deep roots here, and his high school coach is on staff, has entered the portal with a couple years remaining.
Yeah, I think the knee-jerk reaction from a lot of fans is, oh my God, how can ASU lose him? And this is supposed to be such a all Arizona staff, especially with Jason Mons and others. I mean, that makes no sense at all. I think, to play devil's advocate of it, and I don't know the inside workings of it, but to me, this seems like something where, maybe he was advised or suggested to survey his options. They've recruited quite a few linebackers. As you mentioned, it's going to be pretty much a base nickel situation, so there's just fewer guys out on the field than you would in other circumstances. So, again, and I have zero inside knowledge of the situation, but when you have all these things put together, it just seems like a circumstance where maybe, they just kind of, I don't want to say did him a favor, but maybe the conversation happened of like, hey, it might be a tough going for you here. Again, I have no idea, 0 idea. But when I saw that announcement of him transferring, it just doesn't strike me as a situation of someone who's going to, leave for an NIL payday or leave to, go to a more distinguished program. As you mentioned, the season didn't add up for him as many had hoped and thought it would. In a lot of ways, this is reminiscent to me of like Cam McGee transferring in baseball. Comes from a total ASU family, even if they're not, Arizona natives. but there were circumstances that like, hey, you just out of respect to you might have a better opportunity elsewhere. Once again, I'm going to like triple underscore things. Like I don't know what happened, but this just does not seem like some of the other transfers where they're based on going for an NIL payday, or to like a Ladarius Henderson going to a Michigan to have a chance to potentially play for conference and national championships.
ASU did make a number of experienced players at the position through the transfer portal. Crew Jackson coming over from Kansas State was one. Of course, Tate Romney coming over from BYU, former Chandler standout, is bolstering that position as well. Travion Brown, who played extensively for new ASU defensive coordinator Brian Ward at Wazoo, is there as well. But still, linebacker was a group that entering this offseason was an area that needed some additions. Now, in addition to those guys, you're bringing back Will Schaefer, another Scottsdale Saguaro standout as well. Caleb McCullough has been around for a number of seasons now, so this could be an area where you see ASU continue to make some more additions. And as Kenny Dillingham said, told us a few weeks ago that any additions they're going to make from this point on in the portal are going to be guys that they feel can make an instant impact. So, while it is going to be just kind of a base situation, you might have just two backers out there for most downs. You still want to make sure that you have quality depth there. So while ASU is, going to, I guess we should also put the disclaimer that, just because the guy's in the portal, they can come out. So we don't want to necessarily close the book on Connor Soley coming back into the fold a little bit, because we have seen a couple ASU players, including one former local high school player, and Anthony Cooper, and as well as BJ Green, enter the portal, survey the options, and then decide to stay in Tempe. But linebacker is still going to be one area that I think is going to be crucial for ASU. To probably even before the Connor Soley news, it was probably good to add another quality body to that group as well. But if he has played his last down, best of luck to him. He's been on this podcast a couple times, and of course, obviously, what the family has done and meant to this Sun Devil football program is not to be overlooked. So we will see in the days, weeks, and months ahead. And before we talk to Cam Skattebo, a couple other news items that are probably worthy of some quick mention. ASU head coach Kenny Dillingham was named the 2022 Football Scoop Quarterbacks Coach of the Year, most notably because he turned a guy that was a college football punchline over those last couple of years at Auburn. But once he got to Oregon with Kenny Dillingham, Bo Nix became one of the most productive quarterbacks in the entire country. So obviously with a quarterback situation at ASU with Trenton Bourget, Drew Pine, Jacob Conover in that mix as well, you're looking for ASU to take a kind of a big step forward amongst that position group. So having a guy with Dillingham's pedigree is very good, and he collected a little bit of recognition for it.
Yeah, it's just a good little bit of publicity, and proves that the guy knows what he's doing. And you certainly hope that continues, because he's going to have some pieces to work with. And like I said, that's something that it's a good news situation. It's a good news day. So hey, I'll take it, even if it may not be the Heisman Trophy of his genre, so to speak. It's good to have that feather in the cap.
All right. So one other thing that we should talk about, a little bit of a broad sense, because I know you have some thoughts on this, Joe. The Pac-12 just wrapped up their showing in bowl season at 3-4 overall. That was tied with the Mountain West and the Sun Belt with a .429 win percentage, ahead of only the Big 12, but obviously the Big 12 is one more game to go. The wins were Oregon State crushing a very shorthanded Florida squad, Washington beating Texas in a pretty exciting game, and then Oregon also coming back late a little bit to top North Carolina. The losses were Utah, of course, getting beat by Tim Healy alma mater Penn State, Wazoo being hammered pretty soundly by Fresno, and then I know a lot of ASU fans got a lot of joy out of this. Both USC and UCLA lost games in some pretty exciting, inexplicable at some points, very late losses. UCLA lost the Sun Bowl to Pitt, and USC lost to the mighty Green Wave of Tulane in a very exciting Cotton Bowl. A lot of fans like to back the pack. Joe, you continue to not.
Exactly. And I think that, there's more fuel for my fire because, to the teams that you mentioned, they're certainly not long for this conference. So what are they bringing you? If you're talking about whatever argument someone would give as far as, why you should cheer for USC and UCLA, those excuses are running out. So I don't know how anyone in the world couldn't enjoy the collapse that USC had against Tulane. And for Sun Devil fans, I think might have gotten an extra chuckle out of the fact of the defensive player who was in coverage on that game-winning touchdown by Tulane just happened to be a former Sun Devil. And then, UCLA falling apart as well. Hey, you love to see that. Again, I just die on the same hill that I do, is that I've never seen a circumstance, and I get that college football evolves. These days it seems like day after day, not just year after year, decade after decade. But just never really seen a circumstance where I can look back in time and say, yeah, you know what, when USC had their reign of terror under Pete Carroll, that really did these great things for ASU. When Oregon went to the national championship game in 2010, 2014, here's how ASU benefited from that sort of limelight. What we can say is USC doing what they did under Pete Carroll basically has enabled them to become a powerhouse even here 10, 15 years later, because there are memories from that era, and the list goes on. It's basically a very, very elementary, very simple conversation argument for me, is that when these other schools are successful, that helps them succeed further. That helps them recruit. And, a lot of these circumstances are zero-sum type of situations where if they're doing well, that takes food off the table, so to speak, proverbially, from the likes of ASU and others in the conference. So that's why, hey, I'm not gonna. I'll say it very, blandly and mildly, but to heck with them. So I had no problem seeing these games happen. And then, like you mentioned, the Rose Bowl, both my folks went to Penn State. Got a lot of family that, from the general Pittsburgh area. So there are a lot of roots there. Nittany Lions are kind of, team number 2 for me. So that was awesome to see that. And both my folks were in attendance for that as well. So, yeah, all in all, it wasn't a clean sweep of 0-7, which would have been the best case scenario, of course. And, we could have told Santa Claus to skip our house, because that would have been the greatest Christmas present imaginable if I had that. But you know what? I'll take the marquee teams and the LA teams and the conference champion in the Rose Bowl falling flat on their face.
Yeah, generally I'm a the non-con, support the Pac-12 in terms of just helping to elevate the conference profile. But it is interesting in this case, especially when you have like the LA schools on the way out. And I do think you go back a couple weeks, it would have been beneficial for USC to kind of top Utah just to get that college football playoff payday. I believe the conference as a whole would get $6 million to distribute. So there's like a tangible benefit. But since they did fall short, of course, and with that defense that has just been so horrendous. And I don't know. I as of today, as we're recording this on Tuesday, Alex Grinch, the defensive coordinator at USC, hasn't been fired, which is, the fact that he avoided a tarmac situation is pretty remarkable.
And it's wild that his name, it never was a substantial thing, but I remember his name was being rumored in the ASU head coach hire. Obviously there was one and only true option from start to finish, but that's just a wild thing to consider.
Yeah, and even going back to some of the defense. Now, he of course had some good moments building a defense at Wazoo, but ever since he's made the way up to some of the higher profile programs, the defense just hasn't been there. And, you have one of the best offenses in the country, and you have Caleb Williams coming back, and you're scoring in the mid-40s, but, if you're giving up, that on a consistent basis, we've seen what they've been able to do in the high-profile last couple games, and just all season long, the defense has been an issue. But yeah, anyway, so the Pac-12 finishes 3-4 on the season. So hopefully ASU will be able to get in that bowl mix this time next year. But just another kind of overall, I think it was a pretty good bowl season. We saw some amazing semifinal games. We saw some exciting bowl Pac-12 games with I think the Washington win over Texas and Oregon's kind of improbable win over North Carolina, and then of course the exciting losses that the LA schools took as well. I think it was a rough couple weeks for there's too many bowls crowd. So that was I'm very much pro football. Just like the more college football we can get, the better. And Pac-12 played a part. Didn't face plant. I believe it was just a couple of years ago they went over, right?
I would imagine so. That sounds about right. And ASU is probably a part of it, so that's not, that's something. I've been in such hater mode lately. I've been trying to think of, and this is like maybe for another time, of like what. This is so stupid. Like what is the outcome where in the conference for a full season, like what are the worst possible records every other team could have? Like if ASU goes undefeated, every other school goes 0-3 in non-conference, and then what's like the Rubik's Cube that needs to happen within every conference game, like to where like can everyone else literally go 5-7 or something like that? I'm gonna have to sink my brain into it. That's like the player hater of the year, like Super Bowl, champion caliber move right there. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff that I get to.
That's a Sun Devil science project for the off season.
That's some hating for sure. But if there's one person that's made
one bowl eligible team,
yeah, like you go, that's it. Like I wonder how mathematically that could work out because it would be wonderful.
Well, while Joe dives into the numbers and computes that, we are going to now talk to ASU running back Cam Skattebo coming over from Sac State. I know it's a player that we've talked about a lot, brings a lot of versatile dimensions, a very hard runner, and so a lot of folks excited about what he can bring to this Sun Devil offense. So here's our conversation with Cam. How does it feel to be an Arizona State Sun Devil?
No, it feels awesome. I never thought I'd be in this situation coming into my junior year, but with everything going on and Arizona giving me an opportunity, I feel like it's home, and I feel like it's my next step in life to prove to people that I can play football at any level. And I'm just excited to get to know everybody, and come to the city and enjoy where I'm at, and possibly make it my life.
What were the things and the factors that ultimately sold you on Arizona State? And obviously, you took a visit recently. What were some of the things during the visit that kind of really jumped out to you?
I've said it before. The coaches, the family-oriented coaching staff, all those coaches being from Arizona took a big part in everything. They were super, super well. They were high at hospitality. They made sure that everyone there felt like they were wanted. Not one dull moment with the coach that I was there. Coach Iguano hit it off perfect with coming to a home visit with me early last week, and it was really nice to feel wanted at such a high level school like that. And I think the biggest thing was definitely the coaching staff of how fired up and juiced up they seem to be at Arizona State and how they really want to win football games.
Now, obviously, talking about your new head coach, Kenny Dillingham, a guy obviously has a pretty good track record of putting out some high-powered offenses. What are the things that really kind of stand out to you about Kenny Dillingham and what he brings as a head coach?
He brings a lot to the table. He challenges almost every position in every sort of way. He uses his back all categories that are possible to use them. Anything he can do to make sure that everybody on the offense and defense is successful, he's going to do. His biggest thing is he likes to win games, and I'm a winner. I like to win, so losing is not fun. And I feel like going to Arizona State, losing isn't going to be a priority while we're there, and while I'm there, and while Coach Dillingham is there. So I see a lot of great aspirations for the program and what he brings to, especially the running back room of catching the ball and utilizing the running back in all sorts of ways. So I think it fits best for me as an athlete to be able to utilize all my skill sets.
Now, obviously, you're a very versatile player in your own right, and as you mentioned that he likes to use his backs in a number of ways, and whether it's runner or a passer. When you look at some of his offenses, what kind of stands out to you about what he likes to do with his running backs?
I see that he throws to his back a lot. When he was at Oregon, he utilized his running backs, both of them. He had two guys that caught the ball and ran the ball a lot. Watching the games, being able to see not only just those two things, but being able to pass block and everything was huge for me because it would be able to show my skills in all categories. So all the aspirations he has for winning and stuff, I feel like it comes through the backfield most of the time as if you can get all that done in the backfield as in running the ball, being able to pass block, and be able to catch the ball as the fifth receiver on the field. I think it's huge that you have that skill in the backfield, and I feel like with me and a couple other guys coming in, we're definitely going to have that back there. So,
now, how does it feel to be playing for a running back coach in Sean Aguano, who has such a track record of developing really productive college backs? Whether it's Benjamin, Rashad White, most recently ex-Valaday, to be playing a guy leading your position group that has been able to do that time in and over again.
I've been around a lot of really good running back coaches, especially the one I had last year at Sacramento State, Coach Agnew. But Coach Aguano is definitely one of the rare ones you find. He's one of the smartest guys I've been around. Talking football with him for 30 minutes to 45 minutes, I learned more than I did mostly my life. He knows the game in and out. He knows all the language. He knows all the language that all the NFL guys use. He knows what it takes to get to that level because he's produced those running backs. So I feel like I have a great opportunity to be able to learn from him and be able to know what it takes to get to the next step in life, as in going to the NFL or playing at the next level.
Yeah, obviously a very productive career during your time at Sac State. What were some of the biggest lessons that you learned during your time there and that you're going to be bringing with you to the Pac-12?
Being in the Big Sky with at Sac, it was a really high-powered passing and fast-paced offense of league. So going through that system was definitely huge for me. Learning everything I learned through Coach Taylor and his staff, I think it prepared me well for my next step. And coming into Arizona State, I think everything I utilized at Sacramento State with all my catching the ball, passing, run blocking, pass blocking, and rushing the ball. I just feel like the skills are going to transfer over, especially with Coach Aguano. It's going to teach me even more that I don't know already. I think I just got a lot to learn, and there's still a ceiling out there for me that I haven't reached yet. So I'm excited to be there and be with Coach Aguano and inside that running back room, be able to learn everything that he can teach me and make me prepared for the next level.
Obviously a very productive first year at SAC, but then, of course, just a monster season this in 2022, the Conference Offensive Player of the Year as well. What were some of the keys that that you saw that helped you elevate your game from 2021 to last year in 2022?
In the off season, I took it super serious. I knew I was going to be the guy coming into the next season. We had a lot of good running backs from the room, and I knew even though I was a starter the last few games of my freshman year, I still knew I had to fight for a position, and nothing stopped me from thinking that I wasn't in the spot. Being there and doing that, it prepared me a lot for my sophomore year. I think a lot of kids, as they're young, they come in and people think they're not good, but they're just young. And young kids can play at a high level too, and people don't understand that. So coming in as a freshman and being able to play, it definitely helped knowing that all the skills and everything I had were going to come to play. It just took a matter of time and getting comfortable in the system and being able to learn everything all at once. Some things are hard for young guys, and I was able to pick some stuff up that most of them aren't able to pick up as fast as some others, but I think being able to do all that and pick up the playbook and everything helped me be successful, being able to set myself up for success, knowing it's a huge key.
Obviously, coming off of that huge year, you entered the transfer portal to explore your options. What were some of the reasons that kind of led you to want to put your name in the portal and see what else was out there? Coming out of high school, I knew my skill base was set for the highest level out there, me personally, and going into SAC and being able to showcase my skills and knowing that, proving to myself, if not anybody else, I will definitely
see myself playing in the high level, and I'm just excited. Sorry, I'm like taking it all in at once. But entering the portal was a lot for me. It took a lot out of me. Coach Taylor leaving was definitely a big key because he was the guy that brought me in. And I had a running back coach switch my freshman year when I first came in, and James Montgomery left Sac State, and we had Coach Malcolm Agnew come in. So I was coming into a new room with the coach, but Coach Taylor was really the reason that gave me the opportunity to play football at that level. So entering the portal after he had taken a job at Stanford was probably the biggest thing for me, because I felt like after utilizing all my skills that Coach Taylor and Coach Agnew put me up for success in all those categories, I feel like I had another opportunity out there that was a little bit bigger than what I was playing at. Not saying the coaches that were going to come in were going to do that for me, but I feel like there's definitely more out there for me, and as I can tell, I found it. So.
Yeah, and so for any Sun Devil fans out there that are listening that may not have seen you in action at Sac State, give our listeners a scouting report as to what to expect from you when they see you in the maroon and gold on the field.
I'm going to give it my all. I like to win games. There's nothing I'm going to fall short of my effort towards winning the game. I don't care if I have 50 carries or 4 carries in the game. No matter when I'm in the game, I'm going to give it my all to win the game. I'm going to try my best to bring home championships to Arizona State, and hopefully everybody around is doing the same thing and has the same passion. I want everybody in the Arizona State community to feel like I'm family to them, that I'm able to be approached and be able to talk to anytime, no matter where you see me. And it's going to be fun to be able to meet everybody and figure out who the support is and who are the haters.
One of the things in watching you play that really jumps out to me is just how hard of a runner you are, just kind of a relentless, powerful running style. It kind of reminds me in a way of a former ASU running back, DeMario Richard. Is that a mentality that you've always had, or is that something that kind of is able to be coached up, or is it kind of more just instinctual, just like you either have that mentality or you don't?
Yeah, I think definitely growing up in the background I did with an older brother that was super physical in the football world. My dad taught me a lot on being physical. I mean, you never want to be punished. You always want to give out the punishment. So running hard is definitely something I've taken really strongly. With running the ball, you should never think you're going to get tackled. So every time I touch the ball, I feel like I'm going to score. And I don't believe there's anybody that can take me down. If you have those beliefs that you could just get in the end zone every time you touch the ball, then sometimes it'll happen, and sometimes you'll fall short.
Yeah, what kind of role do you see for yourself in this offense? Obviously there's other talented backs that are on this roster as well. But what kind of role are you gunning for in 2023?
I don't. Ever since I've been at SAC, I don't set personal goals. I like to win football games. That's my biggest goal, is to win as many football games as we can and hopefully bring home a championship. I don't really, like I said, I don't set goals, so I just want to be successful as a team. But I like to win. I want to be successful and be able to set myself up for the future. I want to be able to play at the next level, and whatever that brings me and whatever Coach Dillingham offense brings me to be successful, that's what I'm ready to do, and that's what I'm ready to put forward. And I'm excited to be able to be a part of this.
Obviously making the jump up from the Big Sky to the Pac-12, what are some of the things that you're going to be doing to kind of prepare to make that jump up in the college football world?
Football's football. You're either going to be ready to play or you're not going to be ready to play. And being physical as I am, these guys are going to be bigger, stronger, faster. It's just the way the world works, and how these other guys were recruited in the Pac-12 level. But I'm going to play my hardest no matter what. I'm going to give it my all, and if I'm not good enough or if I'm not strong enough to do it, I'm going to keep fighting to be strong enough and be good enough to do it. So you're never going to see me slacking and just give up on any opportunity that I have. Being in this situation, I'm ready to just play football.
Ultimately, when you look forward to the next couple of years in Tempe, what are the things that you're most looking forward to?
Mostly the community. I'm a big community person. I like to be able to communicate with people. You see guys out there that don't like to talk to fans or don't like to give out autographs or don't like to communicate with other teammates. Honestly, it's hard to say, but I want to be able to talk to anybody that comes in front of me. No matter what you have to say, I want to be able to communicate back to you and be able to have a conversation with. I don't care if you're 10 years old or you're 70 years old. I'll be able to talk to any part of the fan base, and I'm excited for that.
Now, ultimately, about 9 months away from the first game as a Sun Devil, but when you look forward to next season, that 2023 campaign, just kind of what goals have you set for yourself? So I know you don't set necessarily personal goals, but what are the things that you'd like to accomplish in year one as a Sun Devil?
Whatever coaches have in store for me is what I want to accomplish. If they want me to rush for 1,000 yards, that's what I'm going to do. If they want me to score 10 touchdowns, that's what I want to do. If they don't want me to do any of that but break tackles and get them 4 yards on a 3rd and 2, then that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be there just to be able to help the team win and hopefully set up the team for success if my role is that role. So I'm excited to be able to just play for the team and win football games.
All right, it is a new year with new goals. It is time that Joe and I are going to outline some of our New Year's resolutions for Sun Devil football and also perhaps Sun Devil athletics as a whole. We each prepared 5 that are football focused and a couple others just kind of in a bigger, larger sense or perhaps focusing on another sport. My first New Year's resolution for Sun Devil football, please find a consistent pass rush. Last year, ASU managed just 17 sacks for the entire season, over 12 games. Only 6 teams in the nation had less. Now, that margin or that number of 17 was the fewest the program has had. The most, as far as I could go back, and granted, this is where you get into the kind of just the sketchy nature of some of the college football team stat keeping and even ASU's own online stats. It is the worst since at least 2009. In which they registered 23. Now, even you go back just a couple of years, even in the COVID-shortened season of 2020, in just 4 games, they had 9. So they were trending well ahead of that. And even we saw, recently, just in a Sun Devil defense that was getting after it, and whether it was from freshman linebacker Merlin Robertson pacing the team with 5.5, but this past season you had 4 guys tie for the team lead with just 2.5 sacks. That's not gonna get it done. It was obviously a byproduct of just perhaps some injuries up front. Jermaine Lole was a very potent pass rusher. He's not been out of the program for a while. Omar Norman Lott has been dealing with injuries. Trevez Moore. A lot of guys on that front have been dealing with stuff, but also ineffectiveness as well. The scheme overall, as we talked about a lot with Donnie Henderson, very vanilla, very, very passive, not really making offenses have to do a whole lot. Now that's where I think that new defensive coordinator Brian Ward's aggressive defense, especially bringing havoc up front with those 4 down linemen. That's one of the things that Kenny Dillingham outlined when he made the hire of Brian Ward. Just like he was asked, why did you choose him as your DC? He's like, well, I played him because Brian Ward's defenses create a lot of havoc, do a lot of things, challenge a defensive or an offensive line to in their protections. So we'll see. And of course, you have guys like BJ Green and Anthony Cooper coming back into the fold. And ASU was pretty active in terms of signing guys, through the transfer portal. Elijah O'Neal, the JUCO guy. Ashley Williams is a 4-star signee. Prince Dorba from Texas. Tristan Monday, a local product, coming over from Wisconsin. These are pieces that should help this pass rush. But, quite frankly, as we saw throughout down the stretch last year, ASU's defense was just god-awful. And and it really kind of starts up front. If you can't generate pressure, and it doesn't necessarily have to have a high sack total. You just have to make a quarterback's life miserable and uncomfortable as can be. And I think that ASU is moving in the right direction in terms of both personnel and coaching.
So just like folks have New Year's resolutions that might be about, physical, mental health, things with their family, things with their jobs, things in their spiritual life, whatever the case may be. I'm going to take a few different angles with the ones that I have. The first one I have is going to be more toward the fan base, and this is to consistently support the football program, this new staff, this new head coach. This is going to be a very similar suggestion, resolution to what we talked about last year when Willie Bloomquist was hired, of like, hey, we don't know how this first season's going to go, but you got what you wanted in terms of a coaching change and in terms of the person that a lot of folks wanted to be hired. So stay the course. And obviously, again, making that comparison, last baseball season was expectedly rough. It was pretty much expected to go generally in the way that it did, with the thought process that brighter days are ahead, and that still is the thought process, and it should be. So looking for football now, you keep the same energy that you have now, that you've had, since a couple days after Thanksgiving when Kenny Dillingham was hired. Keep that energy if ASU rips off a surprisingly good season. Keep that energy if, God forbid, ASU loses to Arizona at home, and as a result of that loss, not only doesn't get the cutback, but falls 5-7 and doesn't go to a bowl game in year one under Kenny Dillingham. Just keep the same energy, because we don't know what this rebuild is going to look like. Obviously, the transfer portal helps a ton in the way that they have been attacking it, just as Dillingham said that they would. That is a huge plus. Everyone should agree that this first, however long it's been, month, 6 weeks, whatever it's been of Kenny Dillingham on the job, has gone, about as well as anyone could imagine. But regardless of the outcome, just keep the same energy, because as we know, this is not here to be a quick fix. That's not to say they don't have high immediate expectations, but this is put together of the hope of a program landscape shifting, changing staff. Not just someone that's a plug and play, get you to a higher point until that person bounces to the next job. So again, to say it for what is probably the 100th time, keep the same energy.
All right, my second resolution for Sun Devil football, going to move on to the recruiting trail. Now, ASU, or Arizona as a state, has obviously become a premier producer of talent, especially at the quarterback position, over the last couple decades, probably in the last 10 years or so. In particular. Now, the 2023 and 2024 classes have a lot of, again, blue chip talent. And ASU is seeming to probably do something that the last couple staffs said they would do, but did not do. And on that note, in sitting down with Jason Mons, and obviously he led a powerhouse program at Saguaro, one of the things he said is that just, these staffs would come in, say that they're going to put that proverbial fence around the state, and then when they didn't get those immediate results, would kind of bail and just default to whether Texas or California, the regions in which they're more comfortable. But this is a staff that is constructed with Arizona first and foremost. And so when you're looking at these 2023 and 2024 classes, there's a high number of blue chip, and that's 4- and 5-star prospects. On Rivals, there's 6 in the 2023 class and 3 as of right now in the 2024 class. On 24/7, those numbers are a little higher. There's 8 this year, 7 in the 2024 class. My challenge for ASU is just to simply, in those 2 classes combined, land 3. And this is not just, those guys that are coming back after, going elsewhere and in the portal. Those are great additions. And, of course, recruiting these days, you're not just recruiting a kid out of high school. You're trying to lay that good relationship and build that that foundation for the good chance that they kind of jump back in the portal and come back. No, I'm talking about 3 of the blue chippers that are straight out of high school ranks, to build that pipeline, to put your money where your mouth is. Now, over 2 classes, 3 is perhaps maybe, some might say too high of a number. Others might say it's too low, but I think it's a good foundation. ASU's made some good inroads already, and talking to some folks that are close to a couple players' recruitments, also just in the scene in general, the feedback has been positive. Now, turning that feedback into tangible results and pen on paper remains to be seen, but I think ASU, if they in these next 2 classes, is able to, just get some of those marquee elite guys, some of those top 10, top 5 in the state ranked guys, that'll, I think, go a long way into proving that this staff is finally going to do something that the other staffs say they would do, but never did.
My second one's a similar topic, and it's proving the hometown approach of the coaching staff hires right. Proving that to be a smart and valuable thing. And that has a number of different levels, including but not limited to some of the things that you were saying. I mean, first and foremost, when the Bullets are live and you got the games going on in the fall, that the coaching is there. There are some criticisms for whether they're warranted or not about, okay, are you going for coaches that have local ties over other aspects? Prove that any of those naysayers wrong with the way that you execute as coaches. Do the same thing in how you're able to use this influx of 9 or 10 as it stands right now, D1 FBS transfers that came from the state of Arizona as far as where they went to high school. Have those players contribute and trend in a positive direction so that it's not just looked back in retrospect, a year from now as, well, they just got this big clump of guys because they were the low-hanging fruit. Make sure that that's not the case. To your point, what you just mentioned, start to make some very positive inroads in recruiting to a tangible level, not just, creating the relationships to cash in on 2, 3, 4 years down the road. Make some tangible impressions there. And then lastly, because if we're talking about New Year's resolution, if we're scanning an entire calendar year, hit that transfer portal when you're around after year one under Kenny Dillingham. Hit that as hard and get some playmakers across the board that, again, also came from the state of Arizona from where they went to high school. Like, make it kind of be a theme so that if you're looking at, the first full year or give it a little bit of change from the hire to the end of the calendar year 2023, that you can look back and say, okay, this thing is working. You don't necessarily need to get to the point where you can stamp a conclusive answer and say, yep, this is 100% absolute gold medal stuff. But at least to say, okay, I was a little bit, for those folks who were a little bit hesitant about this heavy emphasis on, the state of Arizona and the coaching staff, that it looks like a smart decision. I believe that they can get there, but that's going to be a big thing, because if you miss on a lot of those target areas that I mentioned, or much worse, all of them, if you're not getting some of the top recruits of this upcoming class and getting some progress on, ones that are juniors and younger, if you're not getting much out of these transfers that you just got in, if that's how it unwinds, then that's going to obviously create quite a bit of criticism.
My next resolution for Sun Devil football: get a tight end on the all-conference team. And I'm not just talking about just grabbing an honorable mention, kind of the catch-all. Now, we need a first or second team selection. Obviously, the most likely candidate there is Jalen Conyers. And as you put forth, I believe, on our last episode, Joe, he put together some ridiculous numbers in terms of obviously the last few games of the season. But if you stretch that out in over a full season, and this is, of course, going to be an offense under Kenny Dillingham that loves to use the tight end. Oregon's tight ends had 10 touchdowns a year ago. And obviously you combine that with Jalen Conyers, kind of freakish physical abilities, his ability as a pass catcher to be used in a multitude of different ways, his physicality, whether he can go up and go get those jump balls or run over DBs. I mean, this is a guy that has everything you need to kind of bring back the tight end U moniker that ASU fans love to have for so many years. Now, and you also have Messiah Swinson coming back as well, a 6'7", 6'8", 250-pounder. All kinds of matchup nightmares. Hey, maybe you can land both spots if everything goes really well. But I think it's long overdue that ASU, revives that tight end position. We talk about it every damn year. It seems like just this is going to be the year. This is going to be the year. You have Jason Mons, a really good offensive mind as well, coaching up that room. So this is an offensive scheme that likes the position. You have very talented players that can be dynamic producers on the field. Everything's kind of aligned, and some of the more notable tight ends in this conference are moving on, so that makes some room. So I got to see a Sun Devil by the end of the year, when kind of that early December before the conference title game, when those all conference teams come out. I want to see Conyers or Swinson's names on the first and or second team.
You talked about in your first one about the defense, and I'm going to kind of echo that one a little bit, because I think you have to, if you're making resolutions on things that happen on the field of play. If the defense isn't at the top of the list, then you got to go back and watch what happened or what didn't happen over the course of the 2022 season. So for me, it's just get fierce on defense again. You think back to, the Todd Graham blitzing like crazy, even if it cost you on the back end. I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm just saying that one component. You think about how the pass defense improved once you got a very veteran secondary in recent years. It just was so bland, and in obviously so many cases just lifeless. And there are a lot of factors that go into why the defense was what it was last year, but it's different than what we've seen. We've seen some good defense and some above average defenses. We've seen some relatively bad ones. It's not always absolute stellar stuff out here, but you just got to get that energy and ferocity back. And I'm confident that they've got the pieces in place to do so, because it was just so disheartening to see how the defense played. You're talking about, I think it's like we talked about last week, we've talked about multiple times. Last year's defense, if it just wasn't terrible, ASU wins at least one more game, and pretty much the most important one that everybody wanted to have won, and maybe a couple. Again, we're not saying you go from 0 to 60. I'm talking about just going from a F triple minus to like a regular F. So you want to see that spark, and a lot of times that can happen with new staffs. At a lot of different phases of the ball, it's just re-energizing in and of itself. So I'm really, really, really going to be looking for just a new spark for this defense, because they sorely need it.
My next resolution for this Sun Devil squad is talking about the home record. Now, next year is going to be nice for Sun Devil fans, and you're getting your money's worth if you're a Sun Devil season ticket holder, because there are 8 home games on the schedule, and I have actually asked around and just making sure that, because typically they release the schedule mid-December, but some things on the conference side, they're not going to change the schedule in terms of the rotation in this final season in which LA schools are part of the conference. So ASU will have 8 home games next season. Those are Southern Utah, Oklahoma State, and Fresno State. That's your first, second, and third game of the season. Now, the conference schedule, we hopefully we'll have here a little bit later this month, but that does include Coach Prime's Colorado Buffaloes coming to town, USC, Oregon for a nice little revenge match for Kenny Dillingham, Wazoo, and of course the Territorial Cup game against Arizona will be in Tempe. Now, with that slate of games, there's some winnable games. There's a couple that are going to be pretty tough, especially in Oregon and USC. But no matter what, no matter how talented or hurting for talent or who's coaching, ASU obviously plays a lot better between the buttes. I think ASU needs to go 5-3. I think that's reasonable. A lot of people might say they might not get 5 wins at all over the course of the season, but I think that they can get 5 wins in a home slate. Now, obviously, Southern Utah, they should roll them. They don't, red flag. Oklahoma State's losing a lot, so they're not going to be necessarily that number 9 team or whatever they were when ASU went to Stillwater this past season. Fresno State's losing Jake Haener, so they're still a very solid program, but when you lose a quarterback like that,
like they might have that Mikey Kane from Chandler starting for him. That might
is he?
Because he transferred there, yeah.
Oh, see, there you go, the hometown angle right there. And then to Colorado, I think some folks might need to pump the brakes on the year one expectations for Coach Prime out there. Wazoo, you just don't know. They lost a lot in terms of they lost both coordinators as well as some talent as well. Arizona, I think I saw something that they've lost 20 players to the portal. And obviously,
I think they've gotten 2 or 3.
Yeah.
This will be a topic for another time, because that's like number that's also on Peyton is like they're not to sidetrack things here, but objectively their fan base cannot be happy with the personnel movements between the players that they've lost to the transfer portal and the very little that they have done. So I'm just going to put a pin in on that. I'm happy about it.
Yeah, so I mean, there's questions there, and of course, it's a cup game, so it's a coin toss, even in no matter what the circumstances. In any event, ASU should win 5 of those at least, right? I think so. I mean, what we've seen so far, you feel confident in what you're going to see from the offense. Defense is going to be a big question mark. Obviously, you like what you have coordinator-wise, but you just don't know. You just don't know. In the pass rush, as we talked about in my first point, A lot of question marks, but I think that you can find 5 wins on that schedule. And then if you could just steal one on the road, and that includes a trip to the Bay to face Cal, not a great team. Utah, going to be pretty tough as well. The ASU will be heading probably for the final time, at least in terms of regular season play, to the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. So, and then obviously up to the Seattle to face the Huskies, and I believe Joe Moore and Daniel Ngata. A nice little reunion there. Steal one of those games, all of a sudden you're bowl eligible in year one. But yeah, 5 wins, they can do it.
So that's kind of the quantitative look at home games and that sort of thing. Mine is kind of more the qualitative take on the situation. Make football games at Arizona State fun again. Make Sun Devil Stadium an intimidating place. I mean, before last season, in the Herm Edwards era, and for even some dating back before then, ASU was a very, very good team at home. It was a very bad team on the road, but a very good team at home. And especially like in the month of November, you think of some upsets ASU's had over the likes of Utah, Oregon in the last handful of seasons. That obviously fell off. Obviously, the wheels of everything fell off this past season. Now, I know that there are folks that, with a lot of conversations that have been happening on social media and message boards about, game day atmosphere and things that can make just the games themselves, not necessarily the product on the field, but just the environment better. That's a topic for another day, but that kind of thing plays a role. Obviously, this schedule is going to be amazing. I mean, this is probably, it's hard to think of a more compelling home schedule, all things considered, that ASU's had in quite a while. When you factor in, everything that's there. Again, I understand the cyclical nature of the fan enthusiasm. Obviously, of course, is based on the product on the field, but the product on the field is largely influenced by the fan enthusiasm. Just being out there and seeing folks before games, the tailgating was pretty much a, for the most part, kind of a somber deal, or not as enthusiastic as you've seen. I'm not blaming people, because obviously when the team's not winning and you go to games just like, hey, just kind of here to hang out with my buddies and not expecting much. I get that you're not going to be jacked up like you would have been, in 2013 when ASU makes a run that's on par with just about any team in the country at that point. But that sort of thing, you want to get to the point where that sort of deal is fun again. I also know that there are administrative things that are putting some clamps on, tailgating and, closing down certain areas and that sort of thing. So I get that there are a lot of different elements, a lot of variables with these things that I'm saying. I'm not saying there's one direct cause or one direct solution, but I'm just saying if I could, make a wish or a hope for these sort of things to occur over the next, 12 months worth of time, it would just be wonderful for that, vibrant game day atmosphere to return to Tempe. Again, I understand completely that the product on the field is really going to be what determines that, because if they win, people are going to show up, people are going to have a blast. If they lose, it's the other way around. So I'm hoping for the best.
My final resolution for Sun Devil football: beat the LA schools on their way out the door. Talked about a moment ago that USC's coming to town. Now that's going to be a tall order. Caleb Williams is back. That offense is looking loaded and ridiculous again. They're going to be good. They're going to score a lot of points. They might again be a college football playoff contender. But unless they do some radical stuff over the offseason on the defensive side of the ball, who knows? Plus, you get them at home. Again, not exactly at this point, I would be surprised if they pull it off. But hey, stranger things have happened. Now, of course, ASU is going to go to the Rose Bowl and play UCLA for the final time as conference mates. And this is going to be the first time that the DTR is not their quarterback in well over a presidential administration. So maybe it's Dante Moore, maybe it's somebody else. They're losing some pieces, and plus it's UCLA. You never really know what you're going to get. It would just be a nice way to kind of cap this era of the Pac-10 or Pac-8, 10, and 12 eras in which the LA schools and ASU have been in the same conference. With a sweep of the LA schools, I think it'd be nice and poetic. let's get it done.
So the last one on this topic for me is kind of saving the most important for last, and that's get the cup back. I mean, come on now. No matter what happens in year one under Kenny Dillingham, to win back the Territorial Cup can put a positive punctuation mark on the season, whether that's making a good season even better, whether that's making a challenging season a little bit more palatable, or something in between. I mean, let's think. You would have to go back to Dirk Cutter. Is Dirk Cutter the last ASU head coach who did not beat Arizona in his first season? Dennis Erickson did in 2007.
Yeah.
Todd Graham did in 2012, and Herm never lost to him. So there you go. So that's a thing. You don't want to join that club. I know he doesn't want to join that club. So getting the cup back, not just from the perspective of just want to beat those guys, don't like them, or that sort of thing. You got to keep the progress going if you're really trying to put the proverbial fence around the recruiting territory in the Phoenix area in the state of Arizona. You've basically got to win the state on the field. So there are a lot of different benefits because Arizona has had some luck, especially in the transfer portal and in traditional recruiting, in getting some Arizona products to their program prior to this year. I think they signed a couple in their recruiting class, haven't made any waves in the transfer portal. So, I mean, ASU can really continue to dominate that aspect of things with a win. And not always does a win and a loss in that game, mean, okay, this player is going to go wherever the winning team is, but it certainly helps. And so that's something, again, everybody's happy if that's the outcome. And even if you have, a very good season and you don't have that at the finish of the regular season, there will be some people that, are a little salty and sour about it.
All right, so as we close out our resolutions, we're going to do a little big picture or other sport resolutions. For me, just kind of across the board, you got to get competitive with NIL. Now, the Sun Angel Collective is up and running, and there seems to be a concerted effort to get folks to start donating. Of course, during Kenny Dillingham's introductory presser, there was $1 million donation. Good way to start. Now, of course, you just scroll back a little bit on this very feed. I had a sit-down conversation with the executive director of the Sun Angel Collective, Brittany Willett. Kind of goes into a real good detail about what the collective is about, how it operates, and just I know there's a lot of folks out there just think NIL is code for pay for play, and in the Wild West kind of situation that the NCAA created, there might be there in some instances, but that's a situation where ASU is kind of as innovative as they are in so many other areas, has been lacking in NIL, so they need to ramp that up. Of course, obviously in the revenue sports of men's basketball and football, but elsewhere to become just more attractive destination, get current with times because other schools, especially in the conference, have also done a great job in terms of being more proactive. ASU's now been a little bit behind the eight ball. They're reacting, but I think that they can, and they have the alumni base to kind of close that gap in short order if they put their minds to it and put the effort and the willingness to make that a reality.
So kind of piggybacking off that, because, again, there are certain topics that we just have to emphasize over and again and really drive home. That, I think, on a broader scale, doing what everybody can to support the community that is really starting to develop. You're seeing a few things. You mentioned one of them. There are others that are in the works as well that can really create some very interesting, very cool opportunities and things, of course, that benefit ASU, Sun Devil Athletics, and the student athletes. And these are things that are an absolute must in order to rebound to a better place of existence for ASU, and then from there to hopefully get to that higher level that a lot of folks have been pining for years and years. And, I think this proves additionally true, given the fact, of course, that, as we are right here, right now, there are no administrative changes that have happened, this year for ASU. And so I know that there are obviously still folks that are on that fence of, I will only get involved or only get involved to my fullest potential when X, Y, and Z things occur. Those typically meaning personnel, whether it's coaches, administrators, things like that. While I'm not going to argue anyone's opinion on that matter, what we all know by this point is that there are these organizations that one can get involved with, whether it's in an effort capacity or in a financial capacity, that is really strictly just supporting athletics and the student athletes. So I think, again, a lot of folks know that part by now. So just to bring it on home and to sum it on up, you already know of a few things that exist, ways that fans can get involved outside of just the tickets and attending games and cheering things on, and obviously those are integral capacities of this whole ordeal. Just stay tuned for other things that are evolving. When opportunities present themselves, jump on it, get other folks involved, because you've heard Kenny Dillingham talking about activating. That word right there is going to be key. That's just flipping that switch, taking something that's in an off position, putting it into on, and not just into on into neutral or first gear, but really revving things up.
My final resolution is centering on the baseball team. Year 2 of Willie Bloomquist. Now, granted, year 1 pretty much undone by a pitching staff that really struggled. I believe the team ERA was just shy of 7. Not going to get it done. But there's a lot of new talent, and you can check Jack Loader's great in-depth piece about analyzing ASU's kind of overhaul of the roster on devilsdigest.com. But this is a season that the fans have certain expectations for Sun Devil baseball. They got a good core of hitters. They added a lot of good pitching talent. They got some talented guys that are coming back into the fold, and we'll certainly be diving more into baseball in the coming weeks. But you got to make the postseason. You got to make a postseason run a little bit. I mean, you can't just go sub 500 yet again. I think the expectations are there. You had kind of the grace period for Willie, understanding that some of the cupboard, especially in terms of the bullpen and the rotation, a little bit bare. Now they got some talented arms, got some bats, put it all together. Now, not necessarily making it to Omaha type of expectations, but let's see some postseason baseball return to Tempe again.
So that's one sport that I'm deeply passionate about at ASU. I'm going to flip it to another, and that'd be the wrestling program. And this is just a call out for folks to continue to support the wrestling program, or to do so for the first time if that is just something that you haven't necessarily been involved with. It's a conversation I have a lot, and it's more of a good than bad thing. Is I talk to folks like, come on out to wrestling. Like, I know I need to do it. I hear you talk about it. I'm like, let's go. You've got a nationally elite team. They will, compete one more time this year in Mullet Arena. I know there's still a lot of folks that haven't been out to Mullet Arena yet. It's just a really cool place to hang out, and whether it's hockey or wrestling, whatever you're watching, it's just a really cool place to be a Sun Devil. Of course, we had Zeke Jones on at the beginning of the season. Things are shaping up nicely. I tell you, from top to bottom, the entire staff. In all of the athletes. And I'm not saying this isn't the case with other sports programs on campus, because it certainly is, but just great people involved when it comes to the coaches, when it comes to the athletes, just folks that, you can support in every single way, and man, they are earning it. They deserve it. It's a fun sport. Like, I beat this drum because I never attended any sort of ASU or collegiate wrestling event in my life prior to about a little over 3 years ago. It was in the fall 2019. I'll openly admit that, but with a little bit of shame. So I know what it's like. It's easy. You can gather it pretty quickly. It's exciting. It's fun. And you know what? Hey, it's typically pretty cheap to attend by comparison to a lot of other sports. So continue to support it. The unenjoyable truth of the matter is that when athletic departments are making cuts, if that school has a wrestling program, it's often the first to go. And ASU faced that reality for a very short spell of time about 15 years ago, And, certainly not expecting that ever to happen again, and certainly not anytime even remotely soon. But the moral of the story there is, and this is something that I've learned just with, my personal support of the program, is it matters. It matters a lot. The coaches, the athletes, it really matters to be out there cheering them on. And like we've talked about, this is a team that is, pushing for another high ranking at the end of the season at NCAAs. You've got some individual competitors that are going to be competing for national championships. So whatever mode of transportation, I don't know if we can say get on the train, anymore. I don't know if we have to put that one away forever. Now you got the Colt train, Colt and Schultz, so that makes sense.
There you
but
go.
In general, whatever method of transportation you want to use as the metaphor, get on it when it comes to Sun Devil Wrestling.
Is there a vehicle that purpose is activation of some kind? I don't know. We'll workshop it, I guess. Anyway, that'll do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. I'd like to thank our guest, Cam Skattebo, ASU's incoming running back. Joe and I will be back. It is the off season, but there really is no off season for Sun Devil for our college football these days. Plus, as we mentioned, Sun Devil baseball is just a few weeks away. Sun Devil basketball is in the heart of conference play. So make sure you stay with us on the social media side. You can like the show on Facebook at facebook.com/SOTD Podcast, on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, on Instagram at Speak of the Devils, and give me a follow on Twitter and Instagram at bdenny29.
And you can follow me at Joe Healy42. Before we get out of here, huge shout out and thank you and Happy New Year and holidays to not only everybody listening, but to our awesome sponsors. Of course, as you know, DeFalco's Deli, Cactus Sports, DevilsDigest.com, Jones Auto Group, Spaghetti Shack, and Sun Devil Family Charities. You'll hear a lot more about them as things go on, even though the football season has come to a close and we are kind of in somewhat of an off season. Still going to get a lot of love and support to our sponsors, in some cases even more as time goes on, just so you can always know about ways that you can support them and get involved with what they've got going on and benefit from all the awesome things they do for Sun Devils.
All right, so Joe and I will be back next week as we'll be catching up on what is happening across the landscape of Sun Devil sports.